Back at you with another episode coming at you from chooseyourrelationships.com, author of Love Can't Wait, which can be found on amazon.com. So I have a special guest today. She's a keynote speaker, TEDx presenter, full-time author, certified coach. She designs strategic learning programs for organizations seeking to enhance their diversity, equality, and inclusion incentives for race literacy. Her programs use history, science, research, storytelling to create compelling, life transforming experiences. For more than 35 years, she's consulted, designed, and facilitated programs across many industries. She's an artist, master teacher, sound therapist, teacher of A Course in Miracles. She has a new book called Cracking the Healer's Code, a prescription for healing racism and finding wholeness. My guest today is Milagros Phillips. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you. I can't wait for our conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for taking time to be here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where are you from originally?
Originally, I was born and pretty much raised in the Dominican Republic. My first language is Spanish. A lot of people don't realize that the start of the Middle Passage really was in Quisqueya, which is the original name given to that island by the natives. There were Tainos and Caribs that lived on that island, and and it was the first place that Columbus landed and claimed for La Española, which called it La Española, but the actual name was Quisqueya. And people still sing songs about that. But I was 10 when I came to live in the US, didn't speak a word of English, so I had to learn the language. My whole family was bilingual. Everyone spoke English in my family except for me.
Yeah, my great grandfather is from Haiti.
Ah,
Yeah,
ah, wonderful, interesting history about Haiti.
yeah. He actually changed our last name, my family last name. I
Hmm.
don't know when he did it, but
Mm-hmm.
I just know it happened at some point.
Mm-hmm.
This was like Jesus Christ, late 1800s.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, it's always so interesting to me because Haiti has such a rich history.
yeah,
And of course, they were the first to set themselves free from slavery. So
yeah,
everybody was terrified of the Haitians. So they made up all these stories about Haitians,
yeah,
just to fuel the myth, to scare other people in other places from doing the same thing that the Haitians had done, which was to free themselves from slavery and to, get rid of their enslavers. They just, it was
yeah,
so yeah, powerful country, very wealthy country.
yeah,
And one of the things that I find really frustrating is how, you know, this myth, right? Like Haiti is a poor country. It's like you do not colonize a poor country.
no,
And you certainly do not take reparations for hundreds of years from a poor country. Those people got something you want, and so that's why you colonize, you enslave, and all that, because it's either natural resources, human resources, always something, right? Like
yeah,
people don't just colonize a place, and
for no
of
reason.
course the wealth has been siphoned out of that country.
Yeah,
um but yeah, oh my goodness, yeah, rich
yeah.
history.
My dad used to tell me like this. My dad said, "People hate up, not down."
Yeah. That's so
Dad used to say
true.
it like that.
That is, I like that. People hate up, not down. Yeah. I like
Yeah.
to
So
use that.
how did you become known as the how did you start doing this work? I mean, now one thing I didn't know is you were creator of the Course in Miracles. How did that come about?
Oh no, I didn't create it. I teach
No?
it.
Oh,
I
okay.
Yeah, I'm a student of it and I teach it. Yeah, no, this was in the early 90s. A friend of mine introduced me to A Course in Miracles. She was teaching it, and I just like swallowed it up. I love that book. When I was a kid, I used to love Shakespeare. So for me, the language, just because people find the language difficult in the Course in Miracles. For me, it was like,
Really?
oh my God, this is so easy. It's like It's like swallowing it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's why people study it in groups
Oh, okay.
because they have a hard time kind of understanding the language, absorbing what it's trying to tell you, and those kinds of things. So, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, the reason why I wanted to bring you on because I went in the Navy in 1996, and
Mm.
I'm gonna make you laugh. Before I went in the Navy, I grew up very sheltered, so I didn't really know what was going on outside of my where I lived at because I'm from South Carolina. I'm from the
Ah.
the Myrtle Beach area, Georgetown, Myrtle Beach area, right?
Mm.
So I remember when I went in the Navy, I met this girl and she said she was from she said she was Dominican. I'm like, what's that? I did not
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
then the other guy said, hey, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm like, I don't know what's a Puerto Rican. I did
Yeah.
not know. That's how sheltered I was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I started meeting people from like uh Colombia, Spain, Miami, all over the world. And so I was having all these relationships with people, but I was very naive, but everything always came back to, hey, where you from? What's who is he? What's his nationality? I'm like, what? Why is this? It keeps going back to that, even when I tried to get away from it. so,
Yeah.
so this
Yeah.
is why I wanted to bring you on because I'm like, uh, it's like even when I guess I'm an optimist. I always try to hope for the best.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's some people you gotta let. I don't know, So that's why I wanted to bring you on because it always, regardless of the relationships I had with men and women, it not necessarily them, but their family members. They always had something to say. Hey, is he black or whatever? And I'm like, why is that such a big deal?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in those countries, those islands, and the Central and South American countries, all those places that were colonized,
Yeah,
they all suffer from the same thing. We call it colorism, right? Whose skin is lighter versus whose skin is darker, who's
yeah,
got the straight hair versus who's got the curly hair, the wavy hair, and the kinky hair, and the whole thing. I mean, it's a real preoccupation with those folks, and it has to do with the way that the Spaniards set up their caste system.
yeah.
You know, and it's called las castas, which is the caste system,
Okay,
and it was basically set up based on color, skin color, because that was the easiest way to identify someone.
yeah,
They had these pictorial things because it was illegal for an enslaved person to learn to read and write,
yeah.
and so they used pictures, right, to tell the story. And basically, what the story was is that the two Europeans could mate and have a child, and if it was the firstborn child, that child could inherit if that child was born under a legal marriage.
Oh,
Okay, so the first thing they did was they legalized marriage, but marriage was only legal between two Europeans or two European descendants, which meant that everybody else's union was illegal.
mm,
Which meant that if you had a child, and so how it went was, um, two heterosexual Europeans could marry. If their firstborn male was a child, that child could inherit. Okay. If it was a European male and an African female, or a European male and a native female, um, they couldn't marry, right? So therefore, that child was considered illegal or known as illegitimate. So
mm.
that basically meant that the only legitimate people in those countries and in those colonized places were the children of two white people.
Yeah.
Everybody else, if it was, two Africans, two natives, an African and a native, all of those children were considered illegitimate. And the reason that you want children to be labeled illegitimate is because if you are illegal, because that's what that is.
Okay.
If you're illegal in a system, you therefore have no human rights.
Yeah.
Okay. And so as a result, I mean, those those European marriage laws were all over, anywhere and everywhere that they colonized. I mean, the marriage laws were changed in this country in 1967.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the Supreme Court. And so you realize that for hundreds of years, all of these children who grew up to be men and women were considered illegitimate.
Yeah. My grandmother was a product of that. She was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, they used to say, "Oh, she's a mulatto."
Yeah, well, you know where that comes from, right?
Yeah.
So mulatto comes from the word mule.
Yeah.
What is it that a mule cannot do? It can't reproduce.
Oh.
Mules cannot reproduce.
Right.
So the message to the European men was, if you mate and have a child with one of those meaning African natives, okay? African and native women, and you have a child and it's the firstborn male, that child cannot inherit.
Okay.
So basically
the
message, the message was, that's the end of your lineage.
Yeah.
Because you can't reproduce, right? Like, of course it's not true.
Yeah, of course.
Because human beings are human beings, right? But that was the message to the men. And to this day, you find that the majority of what blended families or mixed race couples are mostly, when you do find those mixed race couples, are mostly white women with black or brown men.
Yeah.
You don't see that many white men with black and brown women.
No.
Because of the lingering effects of those laws. Because they could throw you in jail, they could kill you, people would stone you to death, they could hang you, like all of these horrible things could happen to people if they married outside of their so-called race, which, we know that there's only one human race, right?
Yeah.
And there are no genetic markers differentiating one group from another, but they used that for years to convince the men that there was something wrong with those women. So at first it was institutionalized, right? Which means it was turned into law. Mm-hmm. After a while, it's like you don't even need the law anymore because the prevailing narrative was that there's something wrong with those people.
Yeah. And
particularly something wrong with those women. So you don't want to mate and have children with them. Yeah. So it's just, I mean, the whole thing is just...
It's crazy. In Brazil, they say, I forgot how they say it in Portuguese, but they say the black women are for work, mulattoes are for sex, and the white women are for marriage.
Wow. I never heard that one.
Yeah.
But it's like that in all of those islands, in all of those countries that were colonized. It's like that. They convince people that they're, that black women were the workhorse in the society, and that they weren't to be educated. They weren't, and it's pervasive, and it still works.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. I'm like, how it's kind of like hypnotic.
It is hypnotic, and it's interesting that you would say that, because it's all under one law that was started in the 1400s called the Doctrine of Discovery. And basically what that law said was that any European could go off and conquer and subdue and colonize and take over the land, the waterways, and the people, and that the people and their possessions belonged to them, and that they were to turn the people into perpetual slaves.
Yeah.
Keyword here, perpetual slaves. Yeah. And so therefore, people are still functioning from that belief system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you want to even go down this path?
I didn't. No,
You
I
didn't?
didn't. No. I was 13 years old when Dr. King died, and
Okay.
I always tell the story. I locked myself in the bathroom to cry, and it's like literally heard a voice that said to continue the work. I didn't know what that means. I'm 13 years old. Like, what do I know, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But here's what I did know. I'm not doing that. There is no way in the world I'm ever gonna touch this, right?
yeah.
And so I did all these other things. That's why I'm a sound therapist. That's why, I was going to be a singer. I was going to like all these things that I was going to do because there was no way in the world I was ever going to do race. Like I didn't even think about it. It's sort of like, oh, I heard the blah, whatever, right? Never going to do that. And while my children were young and I had gotten divorced and I just started like a new life, new career, knew the whole thing, right? I started doing diversity work and I was really good at it. But I would always end up talking about race, or somebody in the audience would bring it up. And then I would go into my tangent about what I knew about that, right? Um, and then eventually I just accepted that this is really a calling for me. It's never going to go away. It's going to keep
No.
calling me till I say yes, right?
Yeah.
And so I finally decided that I went, and I've never looked back. And I've been doing it now for over 30 years. I love the work.
Wow.
It's life transforming. I have a 2-day program that I do with people. I don't care what color their skin is or where they come from in the world. They never see race the same way again. They just never do. And people will tell you that. And I have people who went through that program. The program's not 20 years old. Who went through that program 20 years ago, and they will still tell you that program is still working on them. And people hear things that people will say in certain towns that I've done this work, and they're like, did you go to Milagros' workshop? Like, oh yeah. I was like,
Good.
because it just changes the way people view this stuff.
What?
And I, and it's based on a healing process that walks people through the layers. And that book that you talked about, this last book that I wrote, is based on that 2-day program.
So where do you have it at?
The book?
No, the conference.
Oh, it's virtual now. Anyone can
virtual.
join. Yeah, it's
Okay.
virtual. And in fact, I have one. I know this program probably will not be out in time, but on December 10th and 11th, which is this Friday and Saturday, I'm doing the final one for this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I also do a monthly. It used to be weekly after they killed George Floyd, to help people walk through, just move through the trauma around that.
Mhm.
But now it's a monthly lunch and learn. So
Oh, okay.
the first Monday of every month, people can just look me up, and it's at 12 noon Eastern, and they can join the conversation. And this it's a very powerful program. Every week we present on something different, whether it's immigration and race, education and race, real estate and race. Like
Oh
all
yeah,
these.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we tackle the various industries
It's
so that people
it's
can understand how it affects the various
it's in
industries.
every area of activity.
Yep.
You can't get
Race
away
and
from.
education, race and you name it.
Yeah.
Race and healthcare. In fact, I wrote a book. My third book is called Speaking Race and Healthcare.
Yeah. So
Because this,
so what is race literacy?
So race literacy is the knowledge and awareness of the history of race, the way that people are acculturated into a racial caste, the laws in the nation state that support race as a human divide, and the effect of all of the above on our current events and individual lives, because it affects everything.
Yeah. So how do you heal from all this?
Yeah. So, and that it's a great question, because I think what people don't understand is that when it comes to the issue of race, it's not one and done. People feel like, well, I went to an anti-racism class and I'm good now. It's like, no, you're not. That just cracks you open, and now you got to do the work, right?
Yeah.
Which is, the work is really about healing. And so, so if people truly are committed to healing, what they need to do is they need to, first of all, get context. They need to understand the history. They need to understand what this is, how it works, how it functions, what are the laws that are behind it, and how those laws are still affecting us. Because when you go to the doctor because you need healing, because something's wrong, right?
Yep.
One of the first things they have you do is write down your history.
Yep.
Right? And so we need the historical piece, which is one of the reasons that that like Black history all over the world has been hidden.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. I found that most people, they really don't know how things work. And the ones that do know how things work, they kind of just making up stuff. Or they might have heard it's been passed down, so they just keep the lie going.
Yeah. Yeah.
and then once you travel and you start going to places like I did, Mexico, Australia, Thailand, Japan, Colombia, you'd be like, wait a minute.
Open your eyes.
This is a lie here. Something ain't adding up.
Yeah, it really.
And then you start putting two together. And then I came back and I started telling my friends, because they from these places that I went, and they're like, yeah, I know, yeah. I said, how come you never told me that? You didn't ask. So most people, they'll just keep the lie going, or they just won't talk about it at all unless you bring it up.
Yeah. You have people in this country, light-skinned people that come from these colonized places that completely deny that they have Blacks in their family.
Yeah.
Completely deny it.
Yeah. I'm like, because they might have like their grandparents or at least one of them, and they'll kind of like keep them in the background or never go visit, or if they do go visit, it's every blue moon or whatever. I'm like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get to pick our parents and our grandparents.
Exactly.
Our brothers and sisters. It just is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But that tells you how pervasive this stuff is. And it's such a betrayal of our sacred humanity.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's incredibly sad. A lot of segregation, even within the families, that people don't talk about, certain people in their family, because, and if it's bad enough that they don't talk about it, but can you imagine what it must have been like for that person?
Yeah.
In those families.
Yeah. For them to even have that conditioning, to even think like that way and to function that way.
Yeah.
So what type of reaction do you get from Blacks, whites, and Hispanics? What, I know you get different reaction for different groups.
In general, or around the work?
Well, around the world.
Oh no, I was asking if it was around the work.
Oh yeah.
The reaction that people give to this work?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I would have to say that just about everybody really loves this work.
That's good.
Because what happens is it helps you to find your true humanity, not the humanity that you've learned about, but the truth and the authentic self that still lives in there, untouched by this craziness. Because a lot of people don't realize that your true self is inextricably linked from who you are, and that you may be traumatized and you may have had horrible stuff happen to you in your life, but that core part of who you are is still there, and will never go away. And it is filled with love and with power, and it can guide you to create a new life for yourself, should you choose to do that.
That's good, because a lot of people, if you start talking about race, they shut down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I just asked a simple
question.
Blame them. Yeah. So it's so do you go worldwide, or you just mainly here in the US?
I mostly have been doing my work in the US. I think now that I have people attend my programs from around the world.
Yeah.
Now that we've gone
online, right?
Online, but my programs were always in person, because I just felt like it was really important to be in the same room as people who grew up differently from yourself. I just felt like that was really important to exchange those stories and to hear, what's happened to people over time. But the program seems to be just as effective online, which really surprised me. I never, people over the years, people have been asking me to put the program online. I was just like, no, we got to do it in person, blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, COVID came and it was like, you don't have a choice. But it was actually good for me to do that, because what I found out is that it's just as effective.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that it's doing well online.
Mm-hmm.
I would think the opposite would be true. If offline, you would get more pushback. That's what I would think. I would think online you get better feedback because it's more of it's a bigger, broader audience you can reach out to online.
Yeah, and that was the main thing. Like, we had people attend from Australia, from Mexico, from the UK, from just various parts of the world, and that was surprising to me. I don't even know how they heard about about the program, but there you have it, right? And so that was really good that people were open and willing to attend and to, just experience it.
Yeah. So what made you I think you might have answered this, but I'm gonna ask anyway. What made you what inspired you to write the book?
So this particular book I wrote, I started about 18 years ago, and I would work on that book from time to time.
Oh, okay.
But then sometimes I go for years without touching it, and it was always haunting me, right? And then I got some pieces of history after George Floyd died, and I was like, it's time to write the book. It's like, that's why I couldn't write the book, because I was missing some pieces. And so yeah, I mean, the other books I wrote before I wrote, so I started this book 18 years ago, but 11 Reasons to Become Race Literate, 8 Essentials to a Race Conversation, Speaking Race in Healthcare. I wrote those between 2016 and 2019. And I, this book, it was like, okay, it's time to finish the book. So, and the book contains 13 stages of healing and how we move through, and what those stages are like, and what, how we move through them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if people wanted to follow you and work with you, where would they go?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook as the Race Healer. I'm, it's my name and the Race Healer. I'm on Instagram, also Race Healer. They can go on my website and get information about my courses and the books and all that. And of course, you can find, if you just put my name on Instagram, all my books will pop up. I mean, I'm sorry, on Amazon. Amazon. All of my books will show up. Yeah.
So there you have it. Like, share this episode. All show notes will be found in the link below. Until next time, we out. Peace.